which will be definitely of your great interest. And apart from that, he has been consultant and a contract researcher for various professional organizations related to associated with cricket and football. And at present, currently, he is focusing on XR technologies, that is extreme reality technologies, in sports and exercise, and has recently hosted the first UK gathering of academics, practitioners, developers, and coaches who are working on the application of extreme reality, that is XR, across professional sports settings. Dr. Runswick's own work in this area is applied in domains ranging from high performance sports to clinical populations engaging with exercise, and includes co-founding a virtual reality company focusing on testing, training, and skill development in cricket batting. Uh, I again welcome Professor Oliver to deliver this session on the topic, which is challenges and opportunities in the application of extended reality in sports, that is XR, in sports and exercise. Without wasting much time, I again welcome Sir and to start the session on extended reality.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction and for welcoming to your campus here. It's a beautiful place to speak, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Apologies for the delay. So we've heard about the title. So what I'm going to do is tell you a bit about my background, how I've got into this field, which is a mix between technology, sports science, and psychology. I'm going to tell you a bit about some of my own research and get you to think about what the future might look like using these kinds of technologies in sports and exercise settings. So my journey's been quite varied in academics. My first job when I left high school was as a full-time cricket coach. I worked in an English school and I coached cricket. I did that before I started my studies, and then I went and studied sport and exercise sciences at Swansea University, which is in South Wales in the UK. When I was there, we studied nutrition, biomechanics, physiology, psychology, but I became particularly interested in psychology and particularly interested in how people learn to move and get very good at skills, a field that we call skill acquisition in the UK. That led me to study further at the Free University of Amsterdam, where I studied a program called Human Movement Sciences for my master's. This is anything from training athletes all the way through to things like stroke rehab or Parkinson's, where anything to do with someone moving is one of our key questions. During that time, I took a minor program in Delft University of Technology to learn about technology in sports too. And that set about my interest for integrating technology in sports with psychology, and that took me to a PhD at St Mary's University in Twickenham, where I looked at decision making in professional cricketers and how we can test and measure decision making in professional cricket. After my PhD, I taught at Imperial College London in psychology, then moved back to a sports institute at the University of Chichester. Thank you. And while I was doing that sports institute work, I then finished my qualifications as a chartered psychologist at the University of Derby. So I'm always doing sport and psychology together with technology integrated too. And then 5.5 years ago, King's College London advertised a position to support their new sport and exercise medicine program for someone to be based in the psychology faculty and also deliver on sport and exercise as well. So that was a really kind of perfect role for me. And for the last 5 years, I've been teaching and researching at King's College in London. And for the last couple of months, the last picture at the bottom, I'm also editor-in-chief of a journal called Perceptual and Motor Skills, where we publish research, anything to do with learning and executing movement skills, particularly relevant to sport and exercise. I also spend a lot of time outside the university, and I think that's a really important thing to consider. I know Amity is very highly rated for its ability to integrate with industry, and we try and do the same thing at King's College as well. So we send our students to Lords to work with Middlesex Cricket as part of their placements, and all of the work that I do centres around spending time with different organisations who have questions that need answering by research, and also supporting people in those organisations. For the Premier League, I support coaches in integrating psychology into their practice. They're experts in football, but they reach out for expertise in other areas. I work a lot with England cricket using the XR technologies, which I'll tell you a bit more about in a minute. Three in the middle are all different virtual reality companies. Rezel is currently being used by lots of Premier League clubs for injury rehabilitation. But my work's taken me outside sport too, and in this side you can see defense science, and then also this small black logo is a spacesuit design company that I work with, who are interested in how they can make suits that help people move the best. So it's always been things to do with technology, psychology, and sports and performance mixed together. And that's what's led me to the talk today about extended reality and how that might apply in different settings. So I'm going to tell you a bit about types of this technology and what it actually is and does, understand the research, get you to think a bit about your own ideas. And when we teach these kind of topics in the UK, because they're so new, we're really interested to hear what the students want to do with things. Quite often that opens up new research agendas. Some of the projects I'll tell you about today are projects that were developed by my students on our programs. So a starting point will be, what is XR? This idea of extended reality covers a big spectrum of different things. On the far side there, you can see real world. That's what we're sitting in right now. And on the far side towards me, you can see virtual reality. And that would be the idea of us being in a computer-generated environment that makes us think and feel like we're somewhere else. So that might be delivered in a headset that looks like this, where you place the headset on and visually you feel like you've been moved to a different environment. But we also have things in the middle, and depending on what our goals and for the task we're trying to generate are, we sometimes use what's called mixed or augmented reality too. So I recently went to a museum, which was actually empty. It just had white walls. We wore a headset and you could see all the most famous paintings from different museums around the world on the walls of that museum. That would be an augmented reality where we're laying over some kind of digital stimulus over real life. And then the mixed reality would be something in the middle where we can interact with the virtual and real world together. That might be something like, maybe I sit at this desk, I put the headset on and my laptop appears and I can work on my laptop even though it's not really there. Interacting in that way would be a mixed reality. So we use different technologies for different things. And one of the things I'll say throughout is often that virtual technologies aren't the right solution too. We're always looking for what's the right technology for the right problem, but we're seeing some good uses of different extended realities in sports at the moment. So when I'm studying this as a psychologist, I don't make these headsets and I don't make the software. I study how we use them and how people interact with them, and particularly how athletes interact with them as a psychologist who works in sport. And the three main things I care about the technology are called presence. That means, do I really feel like I'm somewhere else? And this has been measured for actually many decades, particularly around pilots who've been training in simulators for a long time. Not headsets necessarily, big, very, very expensive fake aeroplanes, but the idea is exactly the same. Do they really feel like they're in an aeroplane right now? We have embodiment. That's the degree to which you can integrate a device with the human body. So, a brain implant would be your ultimate embodiment, for example. Wearing a watch would be an embodiment. Wearing a headset is kind of integrated, but kind of not. You'll notice that it's there. And as a sports scientist, the thing I'm most interested in is interactivity. Can I actually interact with the world around me? Not just watch it. Can I hit stuff, catch things, move? And that's a really important flavor for me as well. So all technologies exist on these spectrums. Actually, you'll see televisions are on there. They're low in all of those things, but they might be the right solution for some things. At the other end, number 8, you'll see virtual reality, which is high in embodiment, high in interactivity. I can touch and feel virtual things, and high in presence. I really feel like I'm somewhere else. And depending on what we're working on, we'll use different kinds of technologies for different problems. So I'm always going to ask the question, do we need a new technology? If you ask, how do I best train my cover drive? I would say go outside, get someone to bowl at you and hit a real ball. We're not trying to replace things with technology. We're trying to offer different options or better solutions. For some things, the technology won't offer anything better, and for some things it will. And my friend Sam Vine, he specializes in simulation training in dangerous professions, like things like bomb disposal and nuclear engineers. And he always uses this phrase, oh, it's cool, but does it work? because he sees so many new technologies where they're like, oh, that's amazing. And then you actually think about how you might use it, and it's not very useful for the problems. So once we have those questions thought through, we'll collect some data and we'll work with lots of different people from different disciplines to try and integrate and understand technologies. And the key thing we're always aiming for in my work is transfer. So you can see a big journey through testing technology, but it always ends up at this point, am I making someone better in real life? Or am I just playing a game and they're getting better at a game? So we're always looking for transfer from these virtual environments back into something else. And in some cases, you'll see people get really good at the game that you've made or the app that you've developed, and it makes no difference at all to what they do in real life. So we ask lots of questions about transfer too. So as we go through, think about the fields that you're interested in. I'm going to talk about cricket, exercise, and a little bit about health. But these technologies have different applications in lots of different places, and you will be interested in different things to me. If you're a badminton player, maybe it could be useful for you, but in a different way. So have a think as we're going through what your own kind of ideas would be. So I said we always are addressing problems. This is one of the key problems we address to train cricketers in England. This is a professional cricket ground in Worcestershire, which floods every winter. And we actually don't really train outside between about September and April. So we spend a very limited amount of time training outside. We're trying to compete. Well, we didn't compete with India a couple of days ago, but we are trying to compete with India, who may be able to train outside a little bit more than us. And our best players get sent to the Southern Hemisphere, but that's very expensive because we're trying to expose people to more games. So the two problems that cricket posed were, can we expose people to more game scenarios in the winter? At the moment, we get people to play indoors, and imagine there's a fielder here, imagine there's a fielder there, and then the bowler and the batter argue with each other about whether it went to the fielder or not. We're trying to produce a better way of exposing people to games. And we're also trying to understand decision-making a bit more in cricket too. Our coaches in our England pathway think the best chance of developing better players in the future is not making them better technically, but making them better decision makers. And they're trying to work out how to measure and train that as well. So we have these opportunities to use XR for real problems that exist that might offer new solutions to these problems. So we have two different technologies here. Now, this first call came from cricket when it was 2 weeks until they wanted to do their first bit of testing. And that's the kind of reality when you work in professional sport, things happen very fast. So on my side here, you can see what's called a 360 video. This is the Loughborough University Cricket Performance Centre. That's where England tend to train. And that's just a normal video, but taken in full 360. So you can put the headset on, see the wicketkeeper behind you, see the scoreboard, see all of the fielders. And this was the first tool we made because we could make it in about 1 day. We got some players down, put the camera where the batsman would be, destroyed quite a few tripods with bowlers hitting the ball at the tripod. But eventually we got enough footage to create a way to test decision-making. Players talk through where the fielders are, what they think the bowler might do, and it's a more immersive way of doing that. On the other side, you can see a virtual cricket simulator. This took about 4 years to develop. We work with physicists, lots of different types of developers to make sure we get the ball flight right, the bounce. Much bigger effort to develop. But in this one, you can't hit the ball when you're just watching it. But on the animated one, you can hit the ball into the gaps. You can actually play a full innings. So it may be more beneficial for different things. So we end up using both of these technologies depending on what the need is. We use the 360 video for testing decision-making, particularly knowing what the bowler is going to do. So the players will actually say, I think it's going to pitch exactly here, and we measure how far off they are. And on the other one, we use it for tactical-based coaching, so you can see different field settings, see what the bowler is doing. So there are two different uses, but with different technologies. So in this video, you can see one of the England coaches testing out the technology and what it might look like. And for us, this is a really valuable kind of testing. Whenever we're developing new things, we're always asking people about them, trying to work out what they want to do with them. And this is the virtual cricket game. So first thing we did with this kind of approach is ask players what they think, have a go at them. We took 39 of our pathway players, so that's under 19, under 18, and under 15 players who are on the England team to test out the two technologies. we took measures of what's called presence. Do you actually feel like you're playing cricket? And what's called the SIM TLX, that stands for Task Load Index. They're developed by NASA to measure how hard simulations are. Astronauts have been using simulation training for decades as well, but again, they used to build big ones. Now they're using virtual ones. And the key things we find are possibility to look at stuff is better when it's a video, but the realism and interactivity are better when you have the ability to actually hit the ball. And when we do this, we talk to the players. What do you think you could use this for? How might you like it? Some players love it. Some players don't. That's the kind of individual differences that we'll get. So once we've got some player feedback, we then tested whether there's any what we call construct validity. So if you're good at cricket in real life, are you also good at cricket in the game? That's what we're hoping for, because it would mean it represents the real game somewhat. So what we did is over the last 4 years, we've tested all of our players and tracked how good they get when they turn pro. And we found there's some relationship between how good they are in our game and how good their batting average is in professional cricket, which is a really good start. It doesn't tell us loads, but it tells us that what we've designed is representative of real cricket. And actually, most things you'll play in virtual reality are not designed to be representative. If you played our cricket app, you probably wouldn't hit the ball because it's real life cricket. It's too difficult. We've got professional bowlers in it. But if you download the cricket game, it's supposed to be fun. So it's very easy to hit the ball. So when you develop training tools, they're often useless as a game, for example, because they'll be too difficult, too complicated. So the players are really interested in the technology to see more game situations. Our players don't play many games because of the weather. So this is a really key thing in the UK. It might not be a big use case in India, for example. So we're always asking what we're going to use technology for. So we're developing these new things in cricket. We're facing different challenges and different opportunities. So we think we're able to test some kind of what we call perceptual cognitive skill. That means seeing and understanding information in the game. The coaches really love the animated game for tactical training. So they used to sit down with a whiteboard and say, player here, what would you do? Now they just do that with someone in a headset. You can stream it onto a screen and they discuss tactics, get people to actually play out the innings they might play out. So we're seeing some good use cases. The other thing we find with professional athletes is they're so aware of how well they move that it's good feedback for developing the apps. Because if a player takes a shot and says, I definitely hit that, but the game says that they didn't, it's very good feedback for us for developing things too. So the big challenges you face in this area are developing the things in the first place. It can be expensive and take a long time. Coach engagement is very interesting. So if you go and work with some cricket coaches, they'll call me up and say, please bring some virtual reality. I'd love to have a go. Some other coaches don't even use their email because they hate computers that much. So you have this real kind of spectrum of engagement with new technologies. And actually quite a lot of schools in the UK have started to buy virtual reality headsets. And we actually work with PE teachers quite a lot because they can buy one headset at a fairly affordable price now. They're about £200. This year they sold more than Xbox and PlayStation in the UK. They're a lot cheaper than a smartphone, for example. So a school will buy a headset as part of their kind of training package for players too. So PE teachers are engaging a lot in this as well. But we have this problem where we're trying to make sure we're making things valid. Playing a real shot, it should look the same in a virtual environment. One thing that I want to reflect on as we go through is when we're doing all of this work, we have all of these different people involved. Computer scientists, front-end, back-end developers. I'm the psychologist who works on how people interact with technology. We work with our data analysts who give us the stats. The coaches and players are involved at every step. There's no point in spending years making a training device without talking to the players first. And then we also have a big talent ID team who specialize in working out who's going to be good at sports. So lots of different angles. In the UK, all of our sports organizations have a psychologist, they have a biomechanist, they have a nutritionist, they'll have a doctor, they'll have a physio, and then they'll also have player development specialists. So you have a lot of different roles working together all the time in sport. So again, just reflect. That was some whirlwind tour and things we might do in cricket, and I'll answer some questions later. But what might you do in your sports? What kind of solutions might you find? If you're a swimmer, maybe virtual reality is probably not going to offer you that much. But if you have other sports which have different problems, you might be able to get some good training. So I also want to talk about exercise. a lot of my work is around not just professional sport, but helping people who don't like sports get more active. So here you can see on one side an exercise-based app who we partnered up to do this project. It's called FitXR. These orbs come at you and you have to punch them where the light's coming from. Even just being on a roof with a blue sky for someone in the UK in the winter is actually a nice experience as well. And on this side, you can see me piloting out this using an oxygen exploration mask in our physiology lab, where we measure exactly how much exercise someone does when they're using the new technologies. And our idea here is particularly targeting people who can't get out of the house, maybe are injured, new ways to exercise. I wouldn't say it's going to be better than going out for a run or for a walk, but it's a new option for people to do something fun if they can't go very far, or if they're injured, or for a variety of other reasons that they might not be doing other kinds of exercise. So the first thing we do again is say, is this actually a better option than other things? So in this study, we compared the exact same workout in a virtual reality headset to a YouTube video, because lots of people who try and exercise at home who can't get out just use things on a screen. So what we did was we measured how much oxygen people use in exactly the same workout with or without the headset. So the blue line you can see is with the headset and the orange is without. You can see they follow the same workout trajectory, the same exercise, but the blue line is always putting in a bit more effort. So we think, right, that's good. Maybe people are doing a bit harder work when they're in the virtual environment. But the best findings are people also found it a lot more fun when they're doing it in the virtual environment, mainly because when you hit one of the orbs, it explodes, you get some points, it's gamified. And we also found what we call high positive affect. That means really good positive emotions after exercise. So this was the same workout, but a screen in virtual reality. So it tells us that there might be some use in making it more immersive rather than using the current existing system, or it might offer us something different. So again, this is an early stage, and we're trying to make exercise more accessible to people. Right now, it might not be that accessible, but the trajectory of the headsets is similar to maybe a smartphone, where we anticipate lots of people will have them in the fairly near future, and this will be an option for lots and lots of different people. What we're running right now is interventions where we actually give people headsets to take home to see if they actually use them or not. It's all well and good saying, oh, come to the lab and do a workout. But now we're giving headsets to people who don't like exercise. And we're seeing quite good engagement for what we call very large individual differences. Some people love it. A few of our participants actually bought their own because they loved it so much. But then some of our other participants say, I don't really care for it. And we're trying to offer the technology as a new option for people who want to exercise, not as a kind of blanket solution, same way you would do with sports. The big challenges in this are kind of interaction. Some people want to socialize while they exercise. The people who've loved the virtual reality for exercise so far are people who don't like socializing, or people who don't like going to the gym and other people watching them exercise. So that's offered a new solution for some people. And it's been quite strong for maintaining engagement, which is a big challenge in exercise. I've been using the same joke in all of my talks, but this time of year, everyone in the UK makes a New Year's resolution, and gym memberships go up by hundreds of %. And then by February, everyone just quits their membership for the next year and waits till January again. So we're trying to get people engaging in the long term, and maybe new technology will help. And in this work, we have behavior change experts, people who are experts in forming habits. We have physiologists. We actually have game designers who are trying to make things more engaging. And we also have policymakers who are the people who are actually trying to say, what should we prescribe someone who's trying to do more exercise if they go to the doctor? And we anticipate, well, we already prescribe exercise, but at the moment we don't have very enjoyable ways of getting people to do it. People who don't like exercise, if you tell them to go for a run every day, it doesn't really work. So we're looking to work with policymakers to think about new ways and how technology might offer new solutions. So the last thing I want to talk about is a particularly interesting project. I've written using the magic at the top. This is a phrase that comes from an old VR researcher who was there from the kind of start of virtual reality. It means doing something in the virtual environment that is impossible in real life. The things I showed you so far are the same things you could do in real life, maybe in a different place or in a different setting, using a headset. What we do in this work is we do stuff that isn't necessarily possible. And our target population here are people who are doing what's called exercise rehabilitation. So if you have a lung disorder or a heart problem in the UK, you will be prescribed 12 weeks of exercise training. So lots of our sports graduates work in those kind of roles where they facilitate exercise for patients, where very few people actually turn up to do their exercise rehab, and we get what's called a disease spiral, where someone who's got a lung disorder, for example, will find it very hard to exercise. It's very uncomfortable, so they avoid doing it. But by avoiding doing it, it makes their disease worse and makes exercise even more uncomfortable, and you get in a big negative spiral. And the key aim of these interventions is to keep people out of our hospitals. So actually buying a virtual reality headset is a very small cost compared to someone having to be in one of our hospitals. And the idea is to try and get people doing what's called preventative care if they've got a disease, where they work out or do exercise and keep healthy at home. So the reason this does something we can't do in real life is you can see Norm cycling the bike here. He's an 80-year-old man who's a keen cyclist, so we often use him for testing. We have this setup where you can see yourself cycle up and down different kinds of hills. So we can set what it looks like visually, but we can also set what the bike does. So maybe you go uphill, pedaling gets harder like it would in real life, but we can also set it so you go uphill, but the pedaling gets easier. And that's something that you can't do in real life. But we know the way people perceive exercise is an integration of all different senses. So feedback from their muscles and from their heart and their lungs, but also what you see gives you an idea of how hard you're working. So what we're doing is creating what we call incongruent stimuli, which means we're making it feel like you're going downhill, but actually you're pedaling harder, for example. And in our early work, we found that people's perception of exercise is driven by what they're seeing, not actually how hard it is. So we measure their heart rate, we measure how much they're breathing. We find that people will do a similar amount of exercise if they're going up or downhill. Whatever we set on the bike, they will do. But people think psychologically that it's easier when they're seeing the downhill slope. And we actually find our patients who have breathlessness get less breathless and they're less scared of exercise because it feels easier to them. So what we're able to do is make people work a little bit harder or be more comfortable to engage with exercise. And this is an early stage, but the idea is this would go out into our exercise rehabilitation classes to help people who really struggle with exercise. And just like the previous work as well, all of our patients we've tested, this is an exercise enjoyment scale. They just find it more interesting to do as well. Going and pedaling on a bike is not that much fun for some people. So what we're able to do is make exercise feel a bit easier and a bit more fun for people who are trying to engage in it. And we've just had this new study out, and the key takeaway from these pictures is that what we found is that if we show you a steep hill visually, you'll actually have a physiological response. So your blood pressure will go up if you look at a steep hill, even if you don't have to work very hard. So we can actually manipulate the way your body responds to exercise by using what you're seeing, which is obviously a key advantage of the virtual environment. So right now we're working with a variety of different partners on this to try and decide the best way to implement these ideas. So we work with the University of Oxford on this with some breathlessness specialists who are doctors who specialize in treating patients who have breathlessness, and also with some really good computer scientists. Integrating a bike that you cycle through a virtual environment is a very complicated problem for the computer scientists to solve. But what we've managed to do is take, if you ever measured RPE when you study physiology, that's what we're taking here, our understanding of how someone feels about their exercise, but being able to change that is a really big tool which we've never really been able to do before. So making exercise feel easier is one of our goals. We're also learning a bit about how we understand exercise perception theoretically from trying this as well. It wasn't our main thing at the outset, but we're learning some interesting new things. We have challenges in this area too. Turns out the existing evidence base that we're working from was quite conflicting. Some people said visual stuff would be really important. Some people said it wouldn't be. So sometimes you're trying to fix a real life problem. You go into the theory, and the theory doesn't really know the answer either. So what we do is we go out, we collect the data, and we try and build step by step. We're trying to maximize this effect and get some hardware that's accessible to different people. The bike's quite hard to get on for an old person, for example. Those little practical things are big issues. And in this, we work with computer scientists, physiologists. We have what's called exercise rehabilitation specialists. So if you do a PE or sports degree, you can do a postgraduate where you specialize in exercise. Exercise psychology, which would be me, and also what we call lived experience. If you go out to be a PE teacher or any other kind of role in sport and exercise, our most required thing is feedback from the people you're actually coaching or teaching or working with. And in the UK, you're not allowed to do healthcare research unless you have someone who actually has the condition on your team. You have to do research with people, not on people. And it's a really kind of big development we've had in the last 10 years. And it'd be the same when you're working with students too. Anything we do in a school, we have to get feedback from students before we actually do it. And it's a really kind of nice innovation in our research as well. So I've talked about a couple of things, but I just wanted to fill the screen with some more ideas about different places that these technologies are being used, which aren't my research right now, but other people are doing. Injury rehabilitation is very popular. So the Premier League teams will use games where you maybe receive passes, you see different tactics, but when you're not having to have contact with other people, say you're doing an ACL rehab, you used to just be in the gym, and once your knee got stronger, then you could get back into football. But now you can go to the gym, you can see football on a virtual device, and also do your strength-based recovery as well. So that's probably the most popular implementation in team sports. We have things like workload management, which is similar, being able to train without actually having to run around. Tactical coaching is a big thing. And actually, although it seems maybe that this would be expensive, in some sports it's being used as an inclusion piece. So in cricket, our training is heavily based historically on very expensive schools. And the England Cricket Programme are sending people virtual reality headsets who go to schools that don't have cricket pitches, so they can do a little bit more training when they're at home. So it's an interesting avenue. We also do that with our female players. They get less game time than the male players, so we give them more time in virtual environment as well. And then in health and exercise, this idea of just a new option that might be more fun for people. And we're not trying to replace other things, but some of our participants have carried on exercising after doing our studies, which is the real aim, because they found a new way that they like to exercise. It doesn't actually even have to be an exercise game. To control a virtual headset, you have to move. We have people who play things like kayaking around Antarctica, taking photos of penguins. It's a very popular game, but it actually makes you exercise quite a lot. So we have these different ways that people get moving, even if they don't like sports too. And there's some names of my PhD students working on these problems on the screen as well. So we'll have some time for some questions, bit of a whirlwind tour, but I'd love to hear your ideas or thoughts or queries on the strengths and weaknesses of using this kind of technology in different sports. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions? Could anyone potentially give me an idea of a use in a sport that they're interested in? Yes?
For a player like Neymar,
Yeah.
he used to get many injuries, like recently in Venezuela, he got injured. Like, how could this XR technology could help?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the companies on the front screen is called Rezzil, Rezzil. They specialize in football-based injury rehabilitation. So when you're doing injury rehab as a professional player, you do what's called graduated return to play. So you just in the gym, and then you might do some non-contact stuff on the pitch, and then eventually you gradually go back in to real training with real people, and then eventually you go back into game-based play. The idea is that, and what they're using in football a lot at the moment, is when you're in the gym, in that first period where previously you just had no football going on, they do things like decision-making tasks. So you receive a pass, you can see players, you make passes, but you do it when you're stood still and you have control over. And what it does is it allows you to accelerate that return to play by seeing more of the game, because people can often be physically ready, but they're so not used to playing that they're psychologically not fast enough. They're not making their decisions quick enough. So they have to do a lot of training before they get back into a match squad. The idea is that, one, it makes your injury rehab a bit more fun because you're doing something football based. And two, it can accelerate the return to play. The other thing people are doing is things like when you're doing your physio, you can have, because it can measure how your body moves, you get things like points for getting the bigger range of motion. If you do a deeper squat, you get more points. And there's lots of applications going on like that in injury rehabilitation too. Whether the player likes it or not is the really main question. Some players like to use it and some players don't. So often the cricket teams I work with have them there as an option. Player can check out a headset if they like, but they don't have to. It's a extra addition. Some players will use it a lot, and I know some players that do. Aston Villa use it a lot as an example, but some players don't. So if Neymar like using it, it has that opportunity to offer that faster return to play. Thank you for your question. Any other thoughts? So I think we have lots of people training to work in physical education in the room. Is that right? So one of the key things that we're working on is the ability to give people access to more sports without facilities. So in one headset, in this headset right here, I have 100 different golf courses. I have cricket, table tennis, football, and we could not have to build as much facilities, or even if we'd love to, we can't. We can give people early exposure to different sports, make them more confident to go out and try other things. That's one of the things that people are thinking about in terms of virtual reality for young people who are trying to learn about sports, is if you can't travel or you can't get to a facility, maybe in the future we can offer you different ways of accessing the same things. Do you have a question? Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we have time, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's finish the questions and then you can come and have a look. Yeah. Anything else? If not, I will say thank you again for your time, and I'll give you a go on the headset. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Oliver, for the wonderful and very informative session on XR. I think this will be very useful, and your session will give them food for thought. They will explore more onto this, surely. Thank you once again.
Thanks. So we'll have an next meeting. Thanks. Thank you. We have time to show the headset.
Yeah. Anyone wants to experience the headset? Anyone want to experience the headset?
Yes.
Sir,